sorry. Hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming out to see Brian and listen to Brian read from his excellent ebook. Before we get going, I'd like to also thank the Elmdale Tavern for hosting this great event. And my name is Doug Fisher. I'm an editor at The Citizen. I was lucky enough to be the guy who handled Brian's 24 parts. And the 24-part series. How they came to be in The Citizen is because of Glebe Collegiate. He has a couple of his former students work in the newsroom, including Andrew Potter, who's our managing editor, and he phoned Andrew one day and said he had 24 pieces he'd prepared, and would we like to see them? He brought them in, dropped them off, and we saw right away that what we had was a real treasure of Ottawa history. And once we started running them in the paper over the summer, we saw that it was a huge success. We had letters that we couldn't publish all of them, and Brian was getting calls and invitations to speak all over town. So let me tell you how this is going to work. Brian is going to start off by giving you a little history of the Elmdale Tavern, and then he and Janet Wilson, who is a life editor at The Citizen, will take over from there. Brian will do a few readings from the book, 2 chapters, 3 maybe, and we'll open up the floor to questions later on. So take it away, Brian.
Thanks. This is not my first time here at the Elmdale. To get the laugh right away. Things have certainly changed. This is a different Elmdale. Still hard to get used to. Cultural events taking place. Music, drama, improv, readings, e-books. Oh, there was culture here, don't get me wrong, but it was a different kind of culture. I was one of the founding members of a touch football organization here. This was our headquarters and conditioning center. Our training table consisted mainly of beer and chuck wagons. The chuck wagons were especially tasty when overcooked, causing cellophane wrapping to melt into the cheese whiz topping and onto the greenish-colored meat. We played our games on Saturday mornings on that open field, what is now next to Keg Gardens down on Richmond Road there. It wasn't a touch football league. It was just one team. It was just us. We were called the Dildos. We were aptly named for 2 reasons. One, like dildos, we were merely facsimiles. You need some time with that? And 2, since we were the only team, we played with ourselves. We sat over on the small side. This is the big side. Our special long table was over there on the small side. We had an athletic banquet every year, speeches, game films, awards, sent out invitations. Sounds like putting on airs, doesn't it? You are cordially invited to the annual Dildo Athletic Banquet. I won the same award every year for 15 years, the OLD. Nobody could beat me at this position. OLD stood for the oldest living dildo. Now my title is the OLHD, the oldest living honorary dildo. I began winning the award in the second year of our franchise existence. The reigning OLD at the time opened the door for me by dropping dead while he was running for a pass. He was running, if memory serves me, a down and out. With characteristic sensitivity, Commissioner Clark, our Commissioner of Football, in his eulogy told us that it didn't matter, he wouldn't have caught it anyway. We were a proud bunch, smartly turned out. Elmdale co-owner John Cowley, also a proud dildo, unfairly maligned as being a cheapskate, chipped in for our team sweaters. My daughter, Megan, was also proud. In grade 3, she did a classroom talk entitled, "My Dad is a Dildo." I got a call from the principal. Had to go over and talk to the guidance counselor. Now, because of Natalie and Bruce Miles, the rules here are different. Now, for instance, if you fall asleep at the table, Bruce will ask you to leave. It was different then. A drunk came in, said he was going to meet his brother here. Hadn't seen his brother in 10 years. Coming in from Nova Scotia, he was. After 4 quarts of Molson Golden, he put his head down and went into a deep sleep on the table. A bit later, the brother showed up, also drunk. "How long's he been here?" he says. "Couple of hours," Marcel, the waiter, says. They can't wake him, so he has 2 or 3 quarts of Molson Golden, and he goes down on the table beside his brother. In a little while, the first brother wakes up and says, "How long's he been here?" And then he goes back to sleep. Marcel, our head waiter, was always made observations regarding these shenanigans, and these observations were always pungent. "These kinds of family reunions are the best kind," he said. He said, you can get together every 10 years, but you don't have to talk to each other. During a teacher's strike in the 70s, I got a job here as a waiter. My wife was initially in favor of the idea, pick up some extra money. First shift here was a challenge. Head waiter Marcel lent me his leather change apron and showed me where to keep the nickels, dimes, and quarters in the leather pouches around my waist. I was to start at 6, feeling quite on edge and apprehensive. My chief concern was making change. You see, my poetic nature rendered me weak in the area of mathematics. After 5 minutes to 6, I went into the can for a nervous pee, just over here. I lifted my apron to unzip all my nickels. Dimes and quarters, slid out and down into the urinal. While I'm on my hands and knees picking out my coins, 2 horrible-looking bikers came in. And while they were urinating on either side of me, made lewd remarks that I cannot begin to replicate here tonight, because now the Elmdale is so, well, la-di-da. At 6 o'clock, my very first customers turned out to be the 2 bikers. I brought them their beer, and when I was finished giving them what I was sure was too much change, one of them threw a nickel on the floor and he ordered me to pick it up. Because, he said, he and his buddy really enjoyed me in that position for obvious reasons, which I cannot outline now because Natalie and Bruce's new Elmdale is just too la-di-da. Do I pick up the nickel and suffer humiliation in front of all the other patrons, most of whom were regulars, or do I refuse and instigate a physical altercation? Not a great choice for a poet. Marcel, who was watching over me from the corner, walked over and with a quick diplomacy for which he was always so famous, solved the situation to everyone's satisfaction. He hit the first biker so hard, they said later they heard his nose crack across the street at the Giant Tiger. Projectile blood flying. Then with a sickening thud, the second biker discovered what it was like to have your head used as a battering ram against the door as you took your leave. It was a terrifying 30 seconds. Drama and improv. Marcel then showed me where the mop and pail were kept. I learned how to swab up the 3 B's: beer, blood, and broken glass. Except for my difficulties making the right change, things ran smooth until around 10 o'clock. A familiar table of City of Ottawa employees, notorious as practical jokers, called me over and asked me did I ever clean the tables because theirs was very sticky. And in fact, one of their beer glasses was actually stuck to the table. I tried the glass, and sure enough, it was stuck. Just then, a very large farmer, a stranger in town, came over and said he could get that goddamn glass off that table. The glass, which had been crazy glued on there, shattered and ripped a gash up his arm, severing a large vein. The big farmer then reeled and staggered about the small side like Jimmy Cagney in the movie White Heat, knocking over tables and howling, then fainted dead away in an award-winning finish. A little while after the ambulance left, containing the big farmer, and I got another pail of beer, blood, and broken glass disposed of, a loud argument broke out over what channel the TV should be on, hockey or Lawrence Welk. Culture rage. Marcel, always the accommodating host, anxious to smooth things over, unplugged the TV, and he told them all if they didn't like it, they could always go to hell home and the whole bunch of you. I learned a lot during that first many of 6 o'clock shifts about Elmdale culture. And when I finally got home that night, soaked in beer and blood-stained, my wife drowsily asked how it went. Not too bad, I said. I'm only down $30.
I think I should ask how long you actually ended up working here.
I worked for 10 weeks, and then I got pretty good at it, and I worked some summers, and did
you break even?
Did not break even. No.
It's kind of ironic that you were born a few steps from here, and that you worked here, and now you're here today to do a reading.
Well, I'm born in Lower Town, but actually born in the Grace Hospital. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're just down the street here, and Ottawa was a very small town then, and it still is to people in my generation. And a lot of us are here tonight, and we seem to know each other, whether we actually do or not. We have similar kinds of experiences. So it's Ottawa was a very small town in our generation's time, and part of the evening here is about that, isn't it?
Exactly. I was going to show, here's a copy of the ebook, the hard copy. So it's 24 chapters of Confessions of a Depression Baby. And in each of the essays, you paint a really rich picture of what it was like to grow up in Ottawa and along the Gatineau River in the 30s and 40s. You write about routine subjects in the chapters, from travel to race, about cars, 2 chapters on cars, sex and religion, but really there's nothing routine about the essays that you've written. They're all gems. But I'm curious to find out, the ideas for the series I've heard have come from the Yellow Pages, and just wondering how that came in handy for you.
Well, I thought that looking at my grandchildren's generation and the previous and the one before them, how hard it is for them to find work, and how easy it was for my generation to get jobs. You could always get a job. And at the time, of course, we didn't know how lucky we were, but now we realize how lucky we were in a community like that, in a society, in a time in history where even as a 14-year-old or even as a 10-year-old, you could do an adult's work. And it was a very great school to go to, and there were so many jobs you could do. And I feel bad now for the kids. They other than getting a kind of muck job in the service industry, there's nothing for them to do. And I felt bad about that, and I started listing the jobs that I had as a kid. And the more I remembered, the more astonishing I was how many things I was able to do, and that a lot of people in my generation did part-time. Evenings, holidays, summers, whatever. And then I thought, I must be missing some, so I went to the Yellow Pages and I looked over through, and I found some more job titles that I recall of us taking part in. So it became a kind of myth about how the series started, with the Yellow Pages, but that's the way I was looking for it.
So how did you actually pick the chapters?
I started with the idea of a job, and then I did one on work. Then I wanted to try and discipline myself to write within 1,000 words, because I thought I'd try to flog it to some local newspaper. And then you came along, Janet.
Absolutely. So one of the chapters that you're going to be talking about next, or reading from next, has to do with smoking. And when I think about stories that I heard about my own mother saying that I was born in Toronto, and she said that for the first week she just stayed in the hospital bed and she was able to smoke, and that the attending nurses all smoked as well. And it was cool, it was hip. And I think about my 14-year-old son now. He'll never know what it's like to sit on a plane or in a movie theater or in a concert hall and be blanketed by smoke. So chapter 2 is called Smoking Lighting Up the Past.